So, just chilling. I know this is going to go on IGTV. It's bloody hair. Anyway, so today I'm brought to you by Non-Selected Conditioning. Proud sponsors of the Sportland Live is what do you do when you don't get picked? Now, for me, it's quite an interesting one because you have to look at this very objectively and sort of take the reductionist approach. Okay, so you've got a squad of 40 odd players, for instance, as any sort of professional team, maybe even more. Not all of them can play, which is fine. Not all of them can be in the team on the match day. It's fine. It's part and parcel of it. The reason why you build a squad, we talked about this with Team Sport Politics, is to create a team that will be successful. However you define success relative to where you want to finish in the league or whatever, that's up to you. But with that being said, there's a long season, and for me, if you are doing your job well, then you'll be rotating, because if you have the ability to rotate because you're coaching well enough and building the players towards their strengths, so therefore you will be able to chop and change very well, and there'll be players that are better than other people than other things, and that's part and parcel of sport and individualisation and individualism. Like, not everyone can kick and everyone can pass. That's fine, trust me, I play on the wing for a long time, I can't do both. So the idea, okay, so back to where we're going with this, is why and what do you do if a player isn't picked and isn't in the team? Traditionally, what happens is that those players that aren't picked and are either injured or they're non-selected and they're not needed, they usually take a flogging. A good old-fashioned English flogging. Line runs, off feet, whatever, right? And usually the justification for this, from my experience and having conversations with people, is we need to replicate the stress of a game. And if you think about that for a second and actually home into that, it's like, okay, we need to replicate the stress of a game. What is the stress of a game? Well, we've all played a game, so we know what the stress of a game actually is. It's not sitting on a bloody watt bike doing lactate sprints and using stupid work to rest ratios just for shits and giggles. Playing a game is fun. Sitting on a watt bike isn't. So therefore, okay, so we know that we can't replace a game by doing off-feet conditioning. Okay, or doing conditioning. What we're trying to do is replace the cost of that game. Now, what's the cost of a game of rugby? Being hit by a bloody car. And if you've played a game of rugby, you know how it feels to play a game of rugby. So, but really, if you're not picked, and there's an agreement that you go towards with this, in saying that I'm happy to go through all that shit of playing a game and the contact and how I feel for the 2 days afterwards, because I'm having fun out there, and I'm with my mates, and I've got the agreement that we're trying to win and play for each other, and that's wicked. And like, I'll happily do that all the time, and most people that are serious about rugby will do that. They will take that bargaining ship of, yeah, it's going to hurt a little bit, but it's great fun. It's a beautiful game, regardless of what sport you're playing. You're having fun playing that game. So then why and what do we put when players aren't picked? Twofold. So we know that we can't replace the game off feet unless or otherwise, unless you make 20 tackles on your day off with another bloke and run really hard into each other and do all that sort of stuff, which is going to pull me into something else in a second. So we know that we can't do that. So let's take that excuse out of the locker. We're trying to replace the game. And what you mean is that are we using a game as a stressor tool? Are we using a game as a fitness development tool? Well, surely if physical preparation is done appropriately, then we wouldn't be using a game to get fit. Just think about that for a second. Makes complete sense, doesn't it? If physical preparation was done properly, then we wouldn't need to use a game to promote physical preparation. Now, what are the fucking odds of that? It's almost as if people are paid to physically prepare players to do their sport roles. Well, so what I'm trying to think about here and where I'm going to go with this is, okay, so what are the things that we need to be looking at doing? So first and foremost, probably train the thing that doesn't get trained the most. Speed. Sprint. Technically develop players' sprinting ability. If this is in team sport, then we all know that they don't train speed enough and they don't prioritise it high enough on the order of importance. You don't get to a breakdown quick enough. That's an excuse that I've heard before. Or you're just not up to speed. Well, funny that. So why don't you train speed? So, yes, there is an aerobic element that you need to be doing. So potentially, if you're not picked and you're doing the team run, maybe do a bit of a speed hit on that day, and then make a decision if you need to do the aerobic work on the day after. Which brings me to another contradicting point, is that if you are using the rationale is that we don't want you to detrain, and then you can revert back to the idea that the reason why you detrain is because you're not playing, but then if you're not playing and you're physically prepared enough, then the game's not making you fitter, then why would you need to do something to replace the game? Does that make sense? Or am I going off on one? I'm not sure. But you can see this rabbit hole that I'm going down with and what I'm thinking about. And so if you're not using a game to get fit, then if you're not fit, if you're not picked, then you need to do fitness to replace the game so you don't get unfit. Then how do you know if you're getting unfit? So really it's an excuse that's void of any rational agreement, because I'm going to ask you a question. Are you measuring the players that aren't playing the most as fitness? Are they running your club's fitness test every week because they're not picked? The likelihood is no. So how do you know that they're not? How do you know that doing that fitness on a Saturday when they're not playing is actually appropriate for their development? I could probably hazard a guess that it isn't. And if you structure your week appropriately and you do your training appropriately, then and you're getting enough reps and you're using your GPS and you're using your heart rate monitors and you're using your good coach intuition, then you probably find that usually when you play in a game on the weekend, it actually takes batteries from the tank and doesn't put batteries back in. So you need to spend more time recovering from a game. So then why would I want my players that aren't picked to be just tired coming into the following week? Surely I'd want them to be more fresh and energized, and that would help with the recovery of the whole group, because then you've only got 15 players that have started, whoever have come off the bench, etc. So they would then build and help with the recovery of the group. Yeah, of course they could accumulate a little bit more volume, but that's 7k or whatever you and those repeat high intensity efforts, that speed, you don't replace that in training. You take that as a stressor. Yeah, it's actually fatiguing players. Competition fatigues people. It doesn't make them fitter. And where we draw the line and where we fall foul on is the fact that, look at the reasons why people don't get picked. Yes, people are going to be better, and everyone's going to agree and disagree or whatever. But the simple fact of the matter is that people are better than other people. That's why we have leagues, and that's why people win and lose and stuff like that. So then let's look at, well, maybe we should concentrate on making our players better. making sure that they get good skill work, making sure that they get one-to-ones with their positional specific coaches, making sure that just because it's a team run, that we don't leave the building early. It's not a day off, it's a day to work. And as coaches, you have a responsibility to the whole squad, not just the guys that are playing week in, week out. And yes, there are regulars, but then it goes back to my previous point that if you are developing your squad and developing your squad for the common goal, then you're trying to get everyone better. So then, if all things being equal, now I know I'm playing devil's advocate here, definitely, but hypothetically, if all things being equal and everyone's progressing and you've signed the people that you want to sign because you want them to play, it's a big point, then surely the goal is to still do skill work. So for me, non-22 conditioning has to only happen on two things. If you're measuring the player's fitness and you know that they're getting their detraining, if you actually can prove that they're detraining, then you can do it. Are you addressing the maximal outputs that aren't being tapped in training? Why do you think it's another excuse just to do a gym session? Unless or if you've done your physical profiling, then there is an opportunity, but it should be done to higher order means, not volume and not filling time. So it leads you, the question is like, what do you think that you should be doing if you're not picked? Or what do you think as a coach you should do with your players when they're not being picked? Having recently worked with a lad that plays in America in the NFL, if you're not picked, you're studying. And I've seen some of the material that they study. And rugby players and team sport players over here have it so easy. You need to be students of the game. And it needs to be put on you. And the coaches need to be working with you. And if you're not picked to play on the weekend there, you are doing a skill workout. You're not doing con games, or you're not doing any of this. And conditioning games is yes, a way to use hands and get a ball involved, but it's not skill acquisition development. It isn't. It's not situational awareness. It's not specific. It doesn't take in the context and the scenarios of the game. What it is a bunch of lads running around the field having good crack. That's what non-22 is. And yes, there needs to be a morale boosting element of that. But I mean, for me personally, there is a lot of time spent better off when players aren't picked to be doing stuff such as developing their own game and working with coaches to develop their game so that they can get in the team, so they can offer more to the organisation, so they can push more with the team. But then maybe, I'm not sure, I might be shooting completely off kilter here, and then we should just keep running players insensely when they're not picked because they're getting less fit. But then the game makes people tired and we don't measure their fitness. So let me know what you think. Speak to you next time.